Yes, folks, it's Thursday. I'm Fred McMurray. It's 2 p.m. Pacific, which means this has to be...
Hey,
welcome to Pillars of Franchising. It's Friday Eve. Yeah, I am Kristin Selmeczy here with Elizabeth Denham Green, and we are here with Pillars of Franchising on this Thursday. Dang, we're getting close to Christmas. It's the 16th.
Yeah. I can't believe we're in the middle of December already. It's scary.
So in Chicago yesterday, it was like 70 degrees, and today it's like 36.
Yeah, we're still in the 70s. I can't get my hair to look right because it's still humid.
Oh, well, I think we have a great show today.
I'm excited about everything. We have a lot of good topics, and we've got a great guest. We've been all hyped up about floating since we booked her.
Yeah, so, I just can't even imagine what that's like. So, but we'll get to that, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about
word on the street.
Yeah, word on the street. My
street.
Favorite next generation to my Gen Xers is the Gen Z, right? So Gen Z is like ages, what are we at?
16 to 24.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's one of my kids.
Yeah. Almost all of my kids are Gen Z except one.
Yeah. So what's the scoop with this generation?
Well, here's something interesting. People know what they know, right? So our age we're Facebookers.
Yeah.
That's what we know. That's what we do. The generation below us, I think, is more Instagram. But what they're saying is these Gen Zs who are the 16 to 24 are huge on Twitter. Like half to 70% of people on Twitter or people who are engaging on Twitter are these Gen Zers. So one thing that's interesting, I think, when you're running a business is you have to go where your people are.
Yeah, right.
But not only that, you have to go where your people are who will be your customers. So if your target demographic is not 16 to 24, you still can't ignore it because they're going to become your target demographic at some point. So knowing where those people live and marketing accordingly and planning long-term, knowing where those people are living on social media is a big deal.
Well, and Gen Z tends to be really big influencers, right? And they're like the driver of the memes today.
Oh, yeah.
And I always get these memes and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. Like, where do they find these things, right? I don't even know where to find them, but I think...
and so they make them. They're like, I made a meme about this. I'm like, you made a meme? I mean, okay.
I don't even know how you do that. But now I just...
maybe it's something you should learn because eventually these kids are going to need someone to clean their house when they get their careers off the ground.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because I said something to my kids the other day about Instagram and they're like, Mom, we don't even use Instagram anymore. And I'm like, well, what do you use, right? And so at my daughter, who's at the 16 level, she still does a lot of Twitter, but then the boys are doing all these other things. And I'm like, how are we going to keep up? But I think you're absolutely right. So when you are in business, you have to stay ahead of the curve, right? So if you're opening a business today, depending on what that business is, not only are you looking for your current customer, but you have to look ahead 5-10 years. If you're opening today for something that like, okay, you use housekeeping, right? So right now we're looking to serve the baby boomer generation. We're looking to serve the dual income. But what's surprising is the number of young professionals today, which are in this Gen Z, actually, a lot of young 20s who are going out, they're making great money, they're super busy, and they've got the extra income, and they learned from mom and dad watching them that their time is quite frankly better spent at the gym or doing other things and just pay somebody to clean the darn house.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and I think when you have that element, my daughter is in that range, right? She's 23 and she's got her first real job. I mean, she's not ready to pay somebody else to clean yet, but when you have made it to that level of income, her time would be better spent doing professional development or personal development or keeping your health in shape, all those things. So it's not too young to even start to think about it at some point. And she actually got all excited. She was so proud. At one point she told me, I'm Twitter verified, and I didn't know what that meant, so I was not adequately appreciative of this. I've since learned. Yeah. But because of her professional experience, she has the green check by her name, and she is a verified Twitter account person. And I felt bad because I didn't, give her as big a pat on the back as clearly she was expecting, because I didn't realize the relevance of that. And that's important, though. That's what your due diligence is the thing. You've got to be on top of what matters and how you communicate on different platforms. And Twitter is a great place for memes and live tweets and tune in. We're going to do a watch party for some events. Those things are what engages those younger age groups, and they're going to eventually be your target audience.
Right. I think the interesting thing too, a lot of times when you talk about the difference between Facebook, say, and Twitter in this case, what they were saying in this article was that in the Generation Z, those folks are a lot more engaged and they like to participate in the conversation, which is really great, because you talk about when you're in business and you're paying for social media marketing, you have a click-through rate and then you have an engagement rate, right? Mm-hmm. And it costs different if you want clicks or do you want engagement. And so I think it's important to know what you're paying for and what level you're paying for. And if you want to target these folks and they start to engage, you have to make sure that as a business, you're engaging back. And if it's not you personally, you have somebody watching those Twitter accounts that can respond and reply and keep the conversations going.
Right. So, because this age range also knows their power. They know their market power. They know the power of their voice. They know the power of their money. And they know the power of their social media. So you want to give them a reason to share whatever power it is they have with you, and not against you. Because
it's
they view themselves as brand influencers, and a lot of them are, and they do have a lot more power than people think.
Well, I would love to hear from our Generation Z folks out there on our Pillars of Franchising Twitter account, because I'd like to see how many of them out there are checking out the show and what they have to say about what it is that we talk about every week, because those are the folks that, some of them now might be ready to look for franchises or question, is the franchise world something I want to get involved in or not? And if not today, certainly in the future they will be. So I think they'll be a great group to engage with, and hopefully they're out there and listening and can send us some tweets.
Yes, absolutely. Tweet us at Pillars of Franchising, or you can call us and tell us at 323-580-5755.
Awesome. And now we have a quick commercial break, I believe. Or we don't. Ray, take it away.
All right. Well, I'm back.
You are. Look at how sunny your face is.
And in honor of you, Kristin, I took a photograph of my toes.
Yes.
So you can see I was actually on the beach, and I was floating.
Were you?
Caribbean Sea.
That's one of my favorite places to be. You know that.
Yes. It was gorgeous out there, and I truly enjoyed it. And Daisy and I had our honeymoon and our first anniversary celebration.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I'm so glad. We got to show back when you got married. Was that last December already, right?
Yeah.
We got to show your wedding clips on the show.
That's right.
Now we've got a picture of the anniversary and honeymoon kind of thing. So that's cool. So thank you for sharing.
You bet.
Yeah. So now, what have you got for us today? We've got an exciting guest today.
We have a wonderful guest who loves to float, and her name is Mandy Rowe, and Mandy is growing the world's largest float therapy brand with True Rest franchising. Having joined the team 6 years ago, she discovered that the Navy SEALs were using float therapy to treat PTSD, insomnia, and for advanced language learning. At True Rest, she sells and develops the national franchise while also being the industry liaison, pushing new technology forward to enhance the float therapy experience. Before True Rest, she worked in commercial real estate in Nashville with SVN Investec Realty and worked in international franchise development with Thomas Franchise Solutions, which has led to her passion for franchising. Welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thank you. Thank you for the intro.
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, all joking aside, all I could think of is laying there floating in this deep meditative state thinking, I could totally dig that.
Yeah.
At that point, you're not even thinking.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I get it. So I'm one of those weird people who gets excited about going in for surgery because all I can think about is when the anesthesiologist comes in and he goes, okay, now count down to 10, and I can get to like 6.
6? I get to 9, 10.
Yeah, and I'm like, the best sleep ever. So tell us about your business. I'm super excited to hear about it.
Yeah, well, no, thank you for having me, because one of the things I always tell people is that so many people just are not aware of floating still. It's amazing how large of a franchise we can be, and yet how few people have even heard of floating. And so I always just start there. For those who don't even know what it is, it's just 10 inches of water and 1,000 pounds of Epsom salts. So
Wow.
You lay on top of the water in an anti-gravity state. And if you're comfortable with sensory deprivation, that means no sound, no light, no gravity. But at True Rest, you also have the option to plug in your phone, listen to anything you want. You've got full control of the lights, full control of the lid. So for everyone who thinks they might be claustrophobic, you've got way more control than you probably realize. And all of our clients come in for exactly what you said, that really profound relaxation, better sleep, pain relief, meditation, and some people come in for advanced learning purposes as well.
How long do your guests typically stay in this meditative catatonic state?
Yeah. Well, some people confuse floating as sleeping, which it is okay to fall asleep on top of the water in the float pod, but it does not replace sleep. So generally people come in for 60 minutes. It's usually 10 minutes of music, 45 minutes of silence, and then 5 minutes of music at the end. But for example, my Navy SEALs here at the spa in San Diego, they come in for 4 hours. And then usually by 4 hours, they're either ready to get out or the water's starting to get a little bit cold and they're ready to get out anyways.
That's awesome. How did you start working with the Navy SEALs?
Yeah, I actually didn't start it. I found it because they were already using float pods. But there were only 14 locations in North America when I found float therapy. And the Navy SEALs had 3 float pods on base. And it was one of my friend's dads that told me that there were a few things that he did to treat his PTSD and his anxiety. And floating is what the guys fought for time in. And they just loved it. And it's not a benzodiazepine or something that they could get addicted to. There's no such thing as, overdosing on float therapy, something so holistic. And it was then that we looked for somewhere to go ourselves, and there's just no public access to a float pod in anywhere in San Diego. So we had to go to Phoenix to get to the closest float pod. And that's kind of when that spark went off that, hey, there's a business opportunity here.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I'm thinking? People who start up franchises like myself who really could have used that the first 3 years.
Yeah.
Because it's very
Stressful.
tense.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't want to bypass over to the importance of finding it through the Navy SEALs, because it's been a huge validator for us as a business model. But we also have continued that dedication back to our military. So at every True Rest across the country, on the 11th of every month, we give free floats to veterans. So any veteran across the country can float for free at any True Rest.
There you go, Ray.
I'll be there.
There you go. That's your freebie.
So let's talk about this model. So how many right now franchises do you have, or franchisees across the?
Well, so I personally run the 4 corporate owned locations, and then total we have 39 locations open. I've got 12 under construction, and we've sold about 92 territories, starting to expand into Canada. So we'll hopefully be by 50 by about June of next year.
Okay, and do you stretch pretty much across the U.S., or are you in kind of just mainly the South and West? Whereabouts are you right now?
We're in 22 states. So
Great.
surprisingly, my most popular market is Ohio. The second largest is Phoenix, and then third is back to North Carolina. So we're really all over the country.
Okay, so where's your next target market that you want to go to?
Oh, if I had my druthers, I'd love to see someone open in Dallas. That DFW market is just screaming for a True Rest.
Okay.
But the next market I'm excited that we've already committed to is Los Angeles. We don't have a spa around that area, and I think there's a ton of not only potential for, you know, meditators, more of that crowd that's open-minded to holistic wellness. And obviously there's a lot of good PR and other things to be open in LA.
I'm surprised that being based in San Diego that you don't have more in LA. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of the strict laws in California and the challenging business environment you have, or what do you think keeps them kind of held back?
Right now, I'll tell you, I think it's just construction costs. And I think everyone's saying this across all industries. Real estate and construction are expensive. And if I can have my most profitable locations in the suburbs of Ohio, then I get why people would kind of gravitate towards that direction and avoid these, you know, highly trafficked 8++ locations if they don't have to.
Okay, I want to remind our listeners today, because obviously this is a really cool model, and obviously we've got a lot of interest from veterans out there right now. At pillarsoffranchising.com and LinkedIn Local Network in the chat, you can type your questions, and Fred will make sure that we get them out there to Mandy so we can talk about the answers to some of those. And obviously Elizabeth gave you the phone number at 323-580-5755. So I know some of you've got some questions out there, so please reach out. Fred will get those to us so we can answer them to the best of our ability. So Mandy, what does it take for somebody who's looking to buy into a float spa? What does that look like for people?
Yeah, so for most of my franchisees, they actually did start as clients. They, you know, found float therapy. They went to a location, decided this was something they wanted to do, but that's not, you know, mandatory by any means. When people come into a True Rest, they usually are getting a small business loan. So they need to have about $125,000 on average as, you know, capital on hand that they can spend towards their SBA loan or their, you know, ROBS rollover process, whatever it is. And then they need to have some kind of operational experience that we think is relatable. So whether that's formerly in massage or running a different kind of franchise, or, you know, being an entrepreneur in some way, or leading a team, even if it's not through entrepreneurship, like the military, for example, have made great franchisees for us just because they've got leadership capabilities and they know how to run a really tight ship. So we're pretty open to a wide range of operators who are the franchisees and franchisees that don't want to be operators but come to the table with a really good manager in place.
Awesome. What does the day, what does a day of the franchisee look like for them?
Sure. So, I mean, it's incredible. I think this is a fun business to be in because everyone that walks through your door is going to have some kind of transformation, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. The float pod really does take you to a really nice space. Mentally, emotionally, physically. And so whether you're in the business every day and just really facilitating that experience, or you're, you know, states away and making sure that you're working more on the business, it's really just being able to spread the word of float therapy through podcasts, through talking to people in your grocery store, through overseeing, you know, the marketing process. There are a few ways to be successful in this business, whether you're in it or you're working on it.
Awesome. I want to give a quick shout out to Dale on Dewey Lake in Dowagiac, Michigan. Ray, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask Mandy, you know, so many franchises open up, they run into some resistance from local people or licensing problems or things like that. Are there any problems with opening? I mean, it seems like there wouldn't be, but obviously you might be able to tell us if there would be.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So there is a float tank association that I'm actually also on the board of that has been really helpful for the industry to kind of take some of those hurdles over with the health department. But for me and my franchisees, thankfully our float pod and our filtration process has been approved by various states. So we're a step ahead for a lot of our franchisees before they come in to whatever state they're in. But if anyone's going to run into a problem, it is going to be with that health department. But I'm batting 1,000. No one's told me no yet.
Okay, awesome. So no issues necessarily with the COVID outbreak and all that kind of stuff when it comes to that.
No, it's actually been fascinating. I think I've had more interest since COVID because we are one of the few health modalities that does not require another individual. So
Awesome.
you can walk in and I can be at the opposite side of the business more than 6 feet away and say, you're in room 5, enjoy. And
Awesome.
they don't need a chiropractor or a masseuse or an acupuncturist or a doctor or someone to facilitate the experience. The float pod takes care of itself.
That's awesome. I've got a couple questions from our listeners. I got one from Sacramento, and we lightly covered it, but maybe you could reiterate and then talk about not just, you know, you have a franchise fee and then you have how much you need to have, but Sacramento wants to know what's the startup cash needed?
Yeah, so we've got a location in Roseville, actually in Sacramento. So that's
They can check it out, right? They can go check
Absolutely.
it out. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is, it's a good example because it is a 5-pod spa, and our typical true rests are between 4 and 6 pod spaces. So I'd say if you had about $125,000 in cash, home equity, or 401k, that's a really good starting point for us to help you get approved for a loan of some capacity. So I'd say let's start there.
Okay, great. And Denver is asking, what kind of liability insurance is required for this spa?
It's not as large as everyone thinks. So I use universal insurance for all of our locations. It is your typical day spa insurance. And thankfully, because of the materials that we have used in the brand, we've got the right slip on the floor that's going to grip your feet, so we don't have to worry about that. The water is so shallow that we're often able to get away from falling under the pool and spa category. And so your typical day spa insurance has covered anything that we've ever needed it for.
Awesome. Awesome. So again, I heard you saying raise keywords. You can work on the business or you can work in the business, right? And do you have a good mix of that in the franchise system today?
Yeah, about 60% of my franchisees are multi-unit owners. So, you know, they're looking at the larger picture and developing quickly. And in the very beginning, I mean, you have to understand people didn't even know what floating was. So the people that were coming to me to franchise, they were so passionate about float therapy that they wanted to be in the business every day, working with every client, making sure they're spreading the awareness in their community. And a lot of those franchisees still just own their 1 units and they are their manager there. And that model's worked out really well for them as well.
Okay, great. Now, one of the big things that we talk about, and it's one of our pillars, obviously, is talking about the training. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of training and mentoring and support your owners get from Float Spa?
Absolutely. So we go through a total of 9 days, but it's split up into 3-day segments. So as soon as you sign your franchise agreement, we have quarterly trainings that are hosted here in San Diego, and we call the first 3 days University. So at University, you're coming to San Diego to learn how to speak intelligently about float therapy. Because at this point, you probably know, what it is, you're excited, you're telling your friends, but someone says, is the water clean? And you're like, oh shoot, I have not learned about the chemistry and the filtration process. Right. So we usually start there and then we work our way through your construction options, make sure that your pro forma and your finances are all set up so that you have some good goals and metrics to work on. And then we send you home. And then once you're ready to actually have your flow pods delivered and you're at the end of your construction cycle, you actually come run my spa with me in Austin, Texas for 3 full days. And that is open to close with my manager and my consultants and me so that you really understand what a full day looks like. And then after those 3 days, you go home, you finish up your construction process, you're hiring your team, and then we will actually fly to you on our own dollar to make sure that you've got someone there for 3 days of a soft open, floating your employees, your friends and family, to make sure that you've taken everything we taught you in Austin and you are implementing it correctly at your location. So we'll come on site.
Awesome. I do have another question from Ann Arbor is asking, is there any lifeguard or emergency training needed in the event that somebody freaks out? a little bit and maybe takes on some water, anything like that that's needed in the facility?
Sure, it's a good question. And Ann Arbor is a little bit of a drive, but we're open in Farmington Hills and building in Utica. So those are my two greater Detroit areas for you. There is a certification, but it's not mandatory. So the certification that you could get is your CPO, which is your Certified Pool Operator. And that's really more for water chemistry purposes. What normal health departments or the certificate of occupancy permitters, what they come in and they say is, I want you to have, a 50-foot pole in every room and a no diving sign, so that, if someone, gets flustered, they've got an easy way out. I'm like, it's much harder to use a 50-foot pole inside the float pod than it is just to get out, I promise you. So thankfully, no, because we've been able to avoid those pool and spa categories, we do not need a lifeguard on site, but a few health departments will ask that there is at least someone in the organization with a CPO certification, so that if you run into any water quality issues, you've got someone who can answer that question. But we have a tech, and a number of us at corporate are CPO certified, so we can assist in the majority of those questions. And to be honest, if something did happen to your water, you would see it immediately, because the water is normally so crystal clear that if that pH gets off in the slightest, you're going to notice. It takes less than 4 hours to drain that flow pod, fill it back up, and you're starting with fresh water at square one.
Awesome. So exciting. Ray, you have any more questions?
I do. A lot of franchises, including the one that Kristin and I are in, have some tales to tell. So we were just wondering if you have anything that's unusual that's happened that could amuse our audience.
Oh, we're talking about floating, of course. I mean, people come in, and I don't want to say with like ailments, but they almost come in, it's very fearful, some people. It's a very vulnerable experience. And whether it's because they've just had, a back injury, or they've gone through, a major breakup recently, they're coming in to kind of have that time by themselves and to try and work it out. And I'd say, at least 25% of the time, someone's crying in my Oasis room, like in our lobby.
Aww.
They just feel so relieved and so relaxed, or, they've gotten out and they've never felt that kind of relaxation before. But on the flip side, I've also had people get out and tell me that they had the craziest vision. They were in a whole different dimension. They were talking to dolphins, like in Altered States movies. And I believe them, because, you can start to see things in that sensory deprivation if you turn the lights off. And the things that people see and what goes through your head when you're in that dreamlike state can really open up into a lot of someone's psyche or into their subconscious. And a lot of people aren't afraid to share those stories with you when they come out.
Wow.
Now I really have to try it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one final question for you. What are the top 3 items on your FDD that you think potential franchisees that are listening should be reading first?
Sure. I think what's unique to True Rest is we have a very transparent item 19. So we share every single location's gross revenue and their expenses and their net profit. So it's very transparent. And we want to be that way, because we don't want you to worry about the float pod side. I'll teach you that. You look at the business side. So that's usually where most people start, and it's a lot of information.
Right.
Secondly, I would say, look into the marketing sections, because we have recently made some transitions and we've made it very clear in there why. Floating, again, is unfamiliar to a lot of people. So we want to make sure that you're not making any claims about curing anyone's anxiety and then getting in trouble for using words like you are a cure or a medical statement that you can't uphold with research papers. So in the marketing section of our FDD, we are pretty clear about what words you can use and what you can't use, and how that's lined out in our style guide and our brand guides.
Okay.
And then number 3 is, I'd say, call my franchisees. Go to the Exhibit H. They are right now all very open to talking to prospects. They also want to bring awareness to this industry. And I'd say a lot of them are prepared to take your phone call, or at least will schedule with you, within 10 days if you're reaching out to them.
Awesome. Mandy Rowe with True Rest Float Spa. Could you please tell us how one might get a hold of you if they're interested in joining your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me directly, which is mandy@truerest.com. It's MANDY. But if you want to start with just some, generic information, truerestfranchising.com, you can actually download a slideshow that has a lot of those item 19 financials that I just talked about, along with an overview of our support, our training, and then what the next steps would be. So truerestfranchising.com, if you don't want to get started right with me, is a good way to get some high-level information.
Awesome. And we will have all that contact information for you on pillarsoffranchising.com, as well on YouTube. You'll see that as we get that channel back up. We understand that there have been some technical problems with YouTube, but we are streaming live on Facebook right now. So please, if you're having difficulties, pop on over to Facebook where you can catch us. And now for our first commercial break.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
And we're back. Welcome again to Pillars of Franchising. Welcome, Jerry Akers. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. You kind of caught me off guard there. No introduction. I'm going before David. I was in La La Land, and suddenly there I see my face on the screen. So I'm doing okay, just a little flustered. Give me a second.
Well, yeah, no worries, no worries. I was actually, as we cut to break, I'm like, run of show, it's Jerry time. Dun, 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 Jerry.
Elizabeth does a great job of sending that out. I just wish I did a better job of reading it so I knew what we were going to do. But, we'll flex with it.
Well, we every time we seem to have a little something, and instead of Elizabeth giving our shout outs, we had our commercial, and so we're good. We're all good.
Hey, I'm ready to go. Mandy's got me all fired up. I don't think we're going to have any floaters close to Iowa for a while, so I may have to travel to try one, but it sounds pretty exciting.
Well, before the show, you guys were chatting it up about trying all these float spas, and I said to Elizabeth in the car earlier today, I really hope there's one near Chicago because I want to try it. And then I walk in the room, you're all talking about it. I'm like, oh, someone stole my idea.
Well, I think it's pretty cool. I'm excited to see more of them around. And actually, I'm going to go check it out because, me and my excitement about franchise systems and those kinds of things. So I'll be checking it out. So be prepared.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll tell you, I would really like to see one here in Chicago and really take a look at their FDD and see who out there is interested in reviewing it with us. And maybe we could help place somebody in her franchise. That'd
Love
be super
it.
exciting.
I'm going to keep it in mind in my circles too, so that I can, start talking it up because they know I'm looking at a lot of options, and it may not be one I get to do, but maybe I can suggest it to somebody else. So good stuff.
Yeah. Ooh, and
we got a great subject. What?
I just got an instant message that there is a spa in Skokie, and a question for Jerry already. Jerry, you haven't even got started.
I just started talking. Okay, lay it on me.
So who's in the picture behind you? Inquiring minds want to know.
The lower one is my family about 20 years ago, so the girls are very young. And the upper one up there is my two daughters. One of them is probably a junior in high school, and the other one is probably in 8th grade or something like that, at a Christmas madrigal event where one of them is dressed as an angel, and she is an angel, so kind of cool. But I'm in my new office. Yeah, I'm in my new office, so we're doing some redecorating here. But
well, I love that you are in your new workspace and you're surrounded by family, because that just kind of sums up who you are.
Well, yes, I want to tag on to that. So family, and then business books. Family, business books, okay? two of the loves of my life right here in the same area. But, you know, Elizabeth introduced us to an amazing subject for this week, and a very positive one, very exciting for franchising. So I am really jazzed to talk about it today.
Awesome. Let's talk about McDonald's.
Yeah, talk about McDonald's, although more related to NLRB, which is the National Labor Relations Board. So brief little history. So about 6 or 7 years ago, McDonald's got hit up by NLRB. And by the way, I'm taking all the politics out of this because this article was about 70% politics. So I had to dig through it to get the real gist of it. But the bottom line, we take all the politics out. The Service Employees International Union went after McDonald's because they felt that a franchisor had too much control over a franchisee's employees, so the franchisor should be responsible. You know, many people would believe that was really an effort to organize at a global scale instead of being forced to go out and work at a local scale with individual franchisees and their staff. You can take it for what you will, but I think on the surface, that's the way it looks. So there's been about 7 years of back and forth on this, not only at NLRB, but also in the courts. And recently, McDonald's won a big case on this. They had agreed to, so the recent case that they won was related to a local franchisee's staff holding a kind of a strike to try and get $15 minimum wage in their area in their location. And the fight was because the NLRB, or actually SEIU, the union, believed that McDonald's corporate helped the franchisees in that fight. And so it was an argument over whether the franchisor helped the franchisee and how that all looked.
So not that the I'm sorry, Jerry, not to interrupt you, but not that the franchisor set that wage, but that they helped in, say, the defense?
That they fed information to the franchisee that allowed them to be more successful in their fight against the $15 minimum wage argument. So really in the big picture, franchisor has little, if any, impact on hiring and managing staff. That's up to the franchisee. That's a message we have to continue to get out because the image is the opposite of that, which is why these kinds of lawsuits come up. My guess is, and there was no information on this, but we all are franchisees on here, so you understand, with the exception of Mandy, who is a franchisor, right? But we all understand that the franchisor doesn't do anything with our people. It's entirely on us. And a franchisor in a situation like this would maybe do a little legal research or something like that and forward that information to the franchisee, because many franchisees couldn't afford top-notch legal information. So in essence, they weren't trying to impact it negatively as a franchisor. They weren't trying to sway anybody. They were merely giving data to a franchisee so that they could do whatever they needed to do. But at the end of the day, it was really an argument about whether the franchisor has too much impact on a franchisee staff. We as franchisees don't want franchisors to have anything to say about our staff.
That's right.
We believe we are a small local employer. We want to pay local prevailing wages or better than local prevailing wages. We want to give great benefits and all those kinds of things. We really don't believe there's a global answer to any of those things. It's got to be more on a local basis. And in this case, the SEIU was fighting because of the impact of McDonald's giving information to the franchisee. And then, so right now, it appears as though, in fact, they won this case, so it's done. The franchisees paid a little bit of lost wages to the employees that were striking and all those kinds of things to kind of come to a settlement so everybody can move on, right? Try to be fair with everybody. But the bigger picture here, Kristin, is this is a step along the path of the NLRB understanding that it is a local battle with local franchisees instead of a global one with a franchisor.
Right.
So as we know, courts look at what's happened in lower courts when they're making their decisions. The upper courts do. So the fact that, this one was lost and actually went for McDonald's will play into any future decisions made at the court level about any of the global SEIU arguments about the relationship between a franchisor and staff. So it's a win now, and it's also a really strong component of future cases. So there you go.
Yeah, I think it was good that McDonald's was one of the ones that led the way. I'm sure there may have been others along the way, but certainly by having McDonald's be the big player and be somebody that could win, it sets a good stage for the rest of us, because I think most people don't go into business and invest what we do to work for a franchisor, right? That's not the game that we
we as franchisees don't feel that we work for the franchisor. We really believe we take a system that they've developed and we work in our area under their system. But again, they don't have anything to say about our employees. McDonald's didn't have much of a choice in this case because they got sued. So and really they got sued because they're the biggest. They have the most employees at stake. So it is good. They can defend themselves really well, and they help us in some way, shape, or form position ourselves so that we can work against this in the future. Now, case in point, I've been in Washington, D.C. for the last 6 or 7 years on Capitol Hill talking to representatives about this very situation because I felt it was by far the most critical thing that would impact us as franchisees and our employees and local business and those kinds of things. So for me, this is a great thing because it makes it a little bit easier for us to have those discussions in the future because we have a point of reference we can go back to.
Right. Yeah. And in recent legislation, that was the big thing, this whole joint employment issue. So hopefully this will help close the door and nail it shut in the very near future so we don't have to go back and revisit it.
Well, and our weekly question, Kristin, I'm not going to position it. I'm going to let you ask it.
Okay, Jerry, is it still a good time to buy a franchise?
It's an even better time now, Kristin. It's always been great, but it's even better now. We have one less thing hanging over our heads. So, yes, it's a great time. And there has never been a wider expanse of options in franchising as there is right now. There's new ones coming out every day. I see Shaq is kicking off his franchise Big Chicken deal, and I think that's pretty exciting. I love the True Rest floating concept because that's something unique. In my studies of potential franchises, emerging franchisors coming up, there are there's some lab things. You and I've talked about some of those, Kristin. There's rejuvenating things. There's age-related things. There's just a wide gamut. If you can't find something that you are interested in that fits all of the parameters, checks all the boxes right now, then you're probably not ever going to find anything. So get busy if you're interested. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and every day I get a new list of current franchises that already have an income stream. So you could potentially buy a business with an income that comes along with it. So you're not starting necessarily from ground zero, which has pros and cons, of course, just depends on what you have the stomach for, right? And so every day I get a list of those. And so if you want to do something, but you're not sure what it is, that's where the conversation needs to start. So always, you can,
Kristin, what better place to start than Pillars of Franchising with all the expertise we've got here? Because we have people on this show right now who can help you walk through that path, weigh some of the differences between different franchise systems, and help make a great decision. So now's the time. Make the call. Let's figure out a way to make this happen and get you into the business of your dreams.
Awesome. Jerry, thank you again for all the work you do for the show and for all of our listeners out there. Hope you have a good week, and we'll look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thanks, Kristin. Bye.
So on that note, if you are interested in talking to one of our mentors about buying a franchise, go to our website, pillarsoffranchising.com. Click on the Contact Us page, and you will find a form where you can check all the boxes of anything you might be interested in. Also, be sure to check out our magazine section on the website. We interviewed former NFL Chicago Bear Doug Plank about his journey through franchising. Wild Birds, we featured Wild Birds Unlimited franchisee Donna Blum, who talked a lot about being empowered with her own income stream as a woman, which was very important to her. We also talked to someone from Lash Lounge, Michael Jania, who overcame, started during the pandemic, went through the race riots in the Chicago area and had to board up his building and was looted, and has still come out to be a very successful early stage franchisee. So check all of those out at pillarsoffranchising.com. One last thing, if you want to be a sponsor and get the word out about your business, also go to that form on Contact Us page of pillarsoffranchising.com and let us know. We can help you get some exposure for your business.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, as always. And welcome back, David.
Hey. Good to be back.
How have you been?
Good.
Awesome.
Good. Really good.
Looks like
so I'm gonna jump on this True Rest bandwagon real quick before we get into this thing.
All right.
I've been getting emails from Mandy for the last couple of weeks. So I'm ahead of you, Jerry. Just a little. Finally, I'm ahead of Jerry. Finally. And I have to admit, I'm getting emails, but I'm tied up with my, opening up the joint. If I would have been exposed to True Rest before the joint, it might have been just in reverse. But definitely something that's still on my radar. I've got to get these open and going. But intriguing, I should say, business model for sure.
I'm with you, David.
However, Kristin, I don't want to burst your bubble here. You do understand the concept of this. This isn't floating in a pool with a drink in your hand, right? Because I know that's why you want to go visit. You want to take your drink and you want to go and get a raft and go hang.
Well, that is also true. That is also true. But when I do that, I'd like to be able to feel the sun, like, baking on my skin. So I'm okay, because this kind of reminds me of when I went off the wall diving and it was a little too deep, and I kind of, that's what this would remind me of, that kind of, what do we call it? The sensory deprivation.
So you were the one that needed the 50-foot pole to grab onto, right?
Yes, I got in big trouble that day, but I think it's awesome, and I'm so glad to know that there's a rest spot in Skokie, Illinois, and Ray's already messaged me that it's time to go up there and have a meeting for lunch. So we're definitely going to be doing that. So I can't wait. Well,
Elizabeth and I are going to meet at the one in Pensacola at some point in time. So that's we're seriously really looking forward to it. The reason I haven't replied to Mandy just yet is twofold. One, I want to go and experience it, and two, I've got to get my other business open first. I mean, I'm known for the shiny object syndrome. I'm going to go do that one now.
So am I. So I wait for you.
That's right. Anyways, what we got going on today?
So here we go. Let's talk about this journey. By the way, you've got so much going on with it, and we're working on all these different site selections. How in the world do you go from with Buffalo Wild Wings? It's a completely different site that you're looking for, completely different build outs. How's that working?
Site, that's a great question. The site itself isn't really, as far as demographics and area and the traffic drivers would look for. But there are really specific, unique things that they have in their site selection plan that you wouldn't really think about. So for me, I'd look and say, okay, here's some big box retail. Looks great. Oh, we carved out this little 1,000 square foot, 1,200 square foot space. But then they come back and say, no, not necessarily, because their traffic patterns and the types of traffic they need a little bit different. So more of the daily, weekly stuff, as opposed to there might be a lot of traffic, but they're only showing up there once every month to a year, right? How many times you go to a Home Depot, so to speak. So that was interesting. And then, as with everything, and I'll say this now so I don't forget it, is the key to it, and we talked about this, a year ago, I think, on one of our programs, is have a great real estate broker. We fell into and you could usually tell right away, we looked at one area and we drove the entire market. This was kind of unique. We drove the entire market, spent a whole day up there, and found 4 different trade areas that we could potentially use.
Now, the important thing about that I like you pointed out is that is not where you live.
Not even close. So
yeah.
That is in Michigan. I split my time, as everybody knows, between Ohio and Florida.
Yeah.
So that was in Michigan. So I didn't know anything about the area. So I'm glad you brought that up. So I relied totally on that broker. So we drove the entire trade market, he identified 4 specific trade areas within that. And there weren't really any locations. There was one that was a potential, and we started to go down the road to kind of put in a letter of an intent, and the numbers just got kind of sideways. And lo and behold, we switched gears, found another area within the trade area that I had registered for, and found an absolutely home run of a location, and have an option of a second one that might be coming available to us next month. So, and those are only 5 minutes apart. So you have to be flexible. I mean, if we would have said, no, we're going to stay in this city, this area, the whole bit, we would still be looking for a location. And that time on my franchise agreement would still be ticking, right?
Sure.
So by being able to pivot and having a great broker that found something in a great trade area, at least we believe it is, we're really excited. I mean, here's the other thing, I should bring this up. So we signed the agreement, we drove that trade area, and I'll use the city's names. Okay, that was in Grand Rapids.
Right, I love that area.
Now we're in Kalamazoo, but we didn't drive Kalamazoo. So I came back to Cleveland, then ended up back in Florida, and he comes up and says, hey, you know what, I have this location, are you interested? Well, our regional manager drove from Wisconsin to check it out for us.
Wow.
He says, holy cow, this is great, submitted it, got corporate approval. This was several months ago, we never even saw it until last month. When we went up to Wisconsin for our training, on our way back to Ohio, we decided, well, let's go look at the location we signed a lease on. So I don't recommend that, but that's the level of trust I had in the broker, in my regional developer.
Well, not only that, David, I mean, that shows the level of support that the joint is giving you through these area developers, which I think is phenomenal, because you know, it's a little different when you have regional developers, and not every franchise offers them. But when you're going into, like in your case, you're completely trading industries, right? This is completely different to you and Lynn. And then also to not be in even close to where you live. Now, I because I'm from originally Michigan, I know both of those towns are fantastic towns, so I don't think you'll lose in either one. But I do have a question about that, because you mentioned that one of the sites is only 5 minutes from the other one. Does the franchisor have you considered, or is there any kind of rules or things about cannibalizing yourself? Is that a concern for you when you think about being just 5 minutes away?
No, you know what? That's great. They said, 5 minutes, kind of a euphemism. Sure, they're close, but they're different markets, and that's the whole thing. So here's what was really appealing to me as I've gone through the 3 different phases of training with this company. That was unlike what I had done before, because we were so brand new. We're the very first ones.
Sure.
This is a dialed-in process as much as any I've seen. Corporate, you're not just going to open up a franchise in this unless it's in an approved geo-targeted trade area.
Okay.
And they've identified those throughout the country. Say, okay, here are, I forget exactly what they call them, I'll just call them trade areas within them. And it's just like anything else. 5 minutes could be 30 minutes to something else if it's rural. But if you have 250,000 people in a county, and they're 5 miles apart, and they're 2 distinct trade areas that have barriers of highways or whatever, it doesn't matter. They're 2 distinct trade areas. So in this particular case, they are totally geared towards making sure they don't cannibalize, but also having enough awareness and brand awareness that it creates some synergy among those in that trade area.
Awesome.
So really exciting. I mean, I was really impressed again, gone through 3 different phases of training. They did an online training. I'll talk about this next week or another time. But the online training, the in-clinic training, and then the corporate training that we went through. And every step along the way was just more impressive than the previous. So I will say this, very, very comfortable with the way they handle the real estate, the trade areas that are identified, and then they know what they want to see around a good location. They have enough data now, 600-700 locations. They know, they can tell you to a T, hey, these are the ones that are going to produce. This one's going to come out a little slow, whatever the case may be.
Wow.
So it's really dialed in. Very impressive. Totally different from the throwing a dart at the wall back 28 years ago when we were the very first franchisees of Buffalo Wild Wings. So we go, hey, this looks like a good location. So now they're not that way now, don't get me wrong, but back then, totally different.
That's the difference. I mean, back then, right, you were with an emerging brand.
Brand new.
Right. So the experience is totally different. So those out there who have the stomach and want to go with an emerging brand, right, and through the trials and tribulations, that's one way to go. Or if you want to wait a little bit and still hit the mark when a brand is new-ish, like with the joint, then there's another way to go. But I think what's great is that this company has really hit the other pillar, the pillar of getting the training, the mentoring, and the support that their franchisees need. So thank you so much for giving us that report. And we look forward to hearing again on how great the joint is doing and supporting you in your journey with this new adventure.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And here we go. As we wrap up the show this week, we would like to thank Mandy for her time today. And obviously we are all very excited at bringing all of us out to her locations to check it out. Be sure to like and share and comment on this episode today. As always, thank you to Ray Pillar, Jerry Akers, our $1 Million mentors, David Kajanik. For their insight and wisdom, I'm Kristin Selmeczy, your 4th $1 Million mentor, and together we are your resource for franchising success. We help you buy, grow, and make your dreams a reality. This has been Pillars of Franchising, and the dream starts here. Have a great week.